have a confession to make. My attic is full of unfinished basket projects, and they're starting to explode out of their storage space. I want to talk about why unfinished projects may actually be a good thing. But first up, we need to pull all my projects out of the attic. I pulled all the baskets out and put them on my work table because I wanted to make a point and show how many unfinished baskets I have. We're going to talk about why this is actually could be a good thing. So I want this to be a positive and uplifting video, not a stressful and shaming video, because unfinished projects aren't shameful. There's no problem in having a pile of unfinished projects. Even if it's this big of a pile of unfinished baskets, you still have so much possibility and opportunity for creativity. So this is just opportunity in disguise. I'm going to sort these out by type and shape. I'm going to finish this handled storage basket while we talk about how to manage your unfinished projects and some tips and tricks that may help you be able to embrace the benefits of unfinished projects while also circling back and finishing them. So this basket, I'm going to do basic lashing. The rim's already set up. I'm going to fill the gap for the handle hole by looping the reed around and then basic lash all the way around. So I'm going to get this set up and going. My first tip for working with unfinished projects, first of all, is embrace the fact that you're going to have unfinished projects. I think one of the benefits is that allowing yourself the freedom to not finish everything all at the same time that you start it or before you start other projects, you kind of are able to lean into your creative inspiration more deeply, because what is inspiring you at the moment, if that's what you're working on, then you're going to put in more effort and more joy and more creativity into what you do than if you make yourself finish one thing at a time. Now, if you have some sort of parameter that means you have to finish one thing at a time, maybe you don't have the resources to invest in a lot of materials at once, that's totally understandable. But if you are just putting that pressure on yourself and not being able to move on to other things, I would challenge you to maybe think about what could it mean to set some projects aside if they start to get a little bit old or don't feel quite as inspiring, and come back to them at a later date. And some ways to do that, some things that I like to do is, one, I keep a space in my attic and in my studio for my unfinished projects. So I've labeled a space that says this is my spot for unfinished projects. And so it gives me the freedom to have unfinished projects and also kind of a guideline of when this is full, I need to revisit this, which is the point of this whole video. And having that space just removes the shame of the fact that you have unfinished projects to begin with, but it also helps you to know where they are when you want to revisit them. And then another thing that I like to do along with having that space is keep a record of what's in your unfinished projects. If you could keep a record of your projects as you make them, somewhere that you note down design decisions that you made, or what steps you took as you're weaving or working, whether it's baskets or anything else, then you can reference that in the future. One thing that I recently started with my knitting projects is taking a little bit of the yarn that I'm using, a little sample, and attaching that to a piece of paper with information on what the yarn is, what size it is, where I got it from, and what type of wool it is, and all those things, so that if I ever want to recreate or replicate that piece, I have that information. The way that that would apply to baskets is sizes, maybe dye recipes if you dye your own reed, patterns that you're using. If you're using somebody else's patterns, like maybe the Textile Indie Shop patterns, you could reference that that is what you used for that project, because although we intend to remember these kinds of things, they easily fall out of our brain. And so having that record is really handy. This also gives you the ability to flip through your works in progress or your unfinished project booklet or kind of file and see what kind of projects do you have in the works that maybe you could be re-inspired to revisit. So if you have something like this guy, just needed a basic rim. And when I finished the class, I was not inspired to finish the rim. But now I have some space and some time and talking to you, so I have the ability to finish a rim because it's just something that really didn't need a lot of creative decision making other than I just needed to sit down and do it. Sometimes there's some problem solving, there's some things that you have to think through, and that can be tricky to do if you're distracted or don't have a lot of energy. So setting those kinds of projects aside, making a note of it in your record book, and then coming back to it when you have more creative energy. A very practical thing for storing your unfinished baskets specifically would be keep them in a Rubbermaid tub or a sturdy cardboard box. And I try to fit a couple in a bin or a box together so that I'm not taking up a ton of space. But this protects them from wear. In my attic, the things in the attic get shifted around and we use it for extra storage for the studio and my house. And so there's a lot of movement happening in that space. And so having them stored in boxes is really helpful because I can just move the box out of the way if I need to without worrying about destroying the basket or the surface of the reed, having to get extra roughed up or damaged. So storing your things in a Rubbermaid tub or a box is a great option if you don't have a shelving solution or closet that you can tuck them in. Another benefit of keeping a record of your unfinished projects, whether you have a book or a list on your phone, if it's as simple as just listing the item in a bulleted list or more complex where you're actually creating a profile page kind of thing for each project. However intense you want to go about it, it's an intentionality thing. When you write that down, you're creating an intention to come back to that project. So it's not a never going to be finished project. It's a someday when I have the bandwidth or the interest to finish this project. And that intention means that you're more likely to circle back and finish your projects and enjoy the fruits of that finished piece. So keeping a record is not just helpful for knowing what you have, but it also gives you that kind of confidence that, yeah, someday I will come back to this. And sometimes you need that emotionally to not get so frustrated with hard projects or things. It's kind of off topic, but I have an unfinished project horror story I wanted to share. And if you have one, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. You can leave that down there. But a couple years ago, I started weaving one of the largest basket projects I'd ever attempted. I wanted it to be 3 feet across and 4 feet tall. Why? I'm not entirely sure. I just wanted to see if I could structurally manage this basket. Huge basket. I started the base, and I'll see if I can throw some footage in here of how it started. Started the base, got the walls woven, started to weave the bottom. I wanted to do a cat's head bottom, kind of vase-like look for this basket. And it took hours and hours to get to this point because the stakes are so long. And then I got very distracted with a lot of other things and never went back to that project. And it shifted from sitting on our deck under a cover to sitting in the backyard throughout the summer. And then I forgot about it in the fall and it started to rain and then it got cold and froze and then it warmed up again. And so the reeds started to mold and it eventually became a pot for compost. Very sad. And I was very disappointed. So that is one of those unfinished projects that I didn't have a good process or system to following back up with that project and having a next step. So if I had kept a record and I had circled back to it, I probably would have finished it, but I didn't keep track of where I was at or what needed to happen or even where it was at. I just kind of got shunted from one spot to the next. So if you have any horror stories like that and you're feeling brave, I'd love to hear in the comments. And to all y'all who are reading those comments, please be kind. This is a safe creative space and we all have our own journeys and our own experiences. So just remember that this is a safe space. Please be kind in the comments. Once you have a space for your unfinished projects, you have a list of all your unfinished projects, then you can set a regular notification in your calendar, or maybe just remember to go visit that unfinished project space, go through your list and kind of revisit what projects are in there and pick one every once in a while to finish up. In the new year, I'm going to be sharing about our Daily Creativity Challenge ebook that we made last year for the Textile Indie channel. And that is a challenge for a 15-minute a day creativity practice that you do every day through the month of January or whenever you feel like it, trying to maintain 15 minutes a day for 30 days. And that's a great opportunity to go through your unfinished projects. You may not make a ton of progress, but you will gain traction in what you're working on and be able to move forward on things because you have consistency and time to work on them. It also frees you up to start new projects that you feel inspired to start and that you want to try because you have the regular ability to revisit your unfinished projects, know that you're going to work on them eventually, that you have time set aside or the intention to have time set aside to revisit them. And you can start the projects that are inspiring you at the moment and then get re-inspired for your past inspirations. This rim I'm going to run out of reed before I finish, so I'm going to end up splicing in a new reed, which is a good way to use up a little bit shorter pieces of your reed. I'm a big fan of using up as much of the reed that you have as possible because it's not an inexpensive material and it's nice to be able to use every length if you can. Oh wow, I am going to finish. That's a happy accident. Finish without having to add a new piece in, that is. And there's my finished rim for my handled storage basket. One project out of the unfinished project bin. If you only take away one thing from this video, what I would encourage you to embrace is the fact that unfinished projects give you the ability to revisit your project when you have more inspiration, and so you'll do it even better with more creativity and more passion and joy than if you try to force your way through something that you're not really feeling at the time. The caveat being that you do come back and revisit them. So the three ways to do that is keep a space for your unfinished projects that you know my unfinished projects live here. Keep a record of those unfinished projects so you have a list or a notebook with a page per project, depending on how much information you want to include and how much of a profile you want to make of each project. And then number 3 is set an intention and maybe even a date on the calendar that regularly comes up that you revisit your unfinished projects to remember what you have and see which ones are inspiring you right now so that you can eventually finish them. The goal isn't to have an ever-increasing pile of unfinished projects. It's to finish each project with intention and passion and joy so that you can explore your creativity and do the thing that you're excited about, even if that means setting aside your project you're doing right now to start a new one. And then someday circling back and revisiting and re-bringing to life the joy in a project you'd started before. Thanks so much for watching this video. Leave comments below on how you store your unfinished projects or maybe your favorite unfinished project horror story. I'd love to hear those. Until next time, check out this video. Happy weaving. Bye.